All right, what is up? Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. Thrilled to be here. Jeff Moore, CEO of ICE, lead faculty for lumbar spine and cervical spine management courses, and here for Leadership Thursdays. Out here in Colorado, heading down to Asheville, North Carolina. We've got a sold-out course this weekend, but I will be back down in that general area in June in Blacksburg, Virginia for, I think, a lumbar spine course. So a few kind of in that general southeast neck of the woods that'll be going on in the second half of the year. So hope everybody's doing great. First of all, of course, huge thanks to everybody who came to Sampler. What an incredible event. Thanks to Sin City CrossFit South for hosting. The facility was beautiful. It was perfect. And of course, the packed house that was there, cracking and clanging. Hopefully you guys followed Instagram. A lot of good stories and a lot of good times. So what's up, Mark? Good to see you, man. So we're going to be in Seattle next year. Hey, good morning, Kelsey. Super pumped for Asheville as well. We'll be in Seattle next year for the Sampler. It's already on the website. If you want to go, get on there and sign up because we're not going to expand the amount of people that can go. We're not interested in making the ICE Sampler, an event of hundreds of people. It's not that kind of a gig. We want to connect with you guys and work out with you guys and kind of have the same feel that we had this weekend in the years past permeating through. So keep that in mind. That'll be in Seattle the first weekend of April. All right, so diving in Leadership Thursdays, want to talk a bit about proving yourself wrong and the importance of it. So to give a little bit of a historical backdrop here, when this company was kind of getting up and running and I was doing more and more traveling and in that time frame, social media was also really blowing up in our profession, especially on Twitter. So kind of looking back to circa 2010, 2011, 2012, there was a lot of us on Twitter having a lot of dialogue. And I've got to be honest that one of the things that always struck me was that the quality of our dialogue wasn't very good. Right? When you watch sort of arguments take place or different points of view being presented, it was pretty rare that the conversation culminated in maybe a clear win or loss or a really productive compromise. Instead, there seemed to be a lot of emotion, but not a lot of progress. And you couldn't help but observe that from a third-party perspective. And undoubtedly, I knew that I was involved in that as well. I mean, we were all kind of in the mix. And so back then, when I was traveling a lot early on, airplanes didn't have either any Wi-Fi or any good Wi-Fi. So, I could rock an Audible or a downloaded podcast, but eventually I wanted to think and my brain wanted to work. And so I would use the airplane as a chance to develop this exercise and strategy to ensure that I was not getting lost in those conversations that weren't going anywhere and ultimately were just a time suck, where you got done and nothing ever really moved in any direction. And I thought, boy, that is a tremendously unproductive way to use our time, which drove me crazy. And so I began to wonder how we could strategize against that. And what I started to realize was that many of the points of view that were being brought to the table were poorly examined. Right? So just like Socrates once said, right, that the unexamined life is not worth living, the unexamined point of view is probably often not worth presenting, because it doesn't get anybody anywhere. Because when the point of view is not previously examined, all that winds up happening is random gaps are identified that derails the conversation and no ultimate culmination of use is ever achieved. So it's an unfortunate thing for all parties when a poorly examined point of view is presented. And so you begin to, not to sit here and quote philosophers all morning, but you begin to wonder, what does that mean in engagement? And I've got no doubt that most of you have read The Art of War, Sun Tzu's The Art of War at some point. And you'll recall the saying that, right, if you know both yourself and the enemy, right, you don't have to fear the result of 100 battles. If you know one or the other, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory there's going to be a defeat. If you don't know either the enemy or yourself, you will succumb in every fight. Right, and so it's this understanding that you have to know both sides. You have to know yourself, and you have to know the enemy. If you, and I hate saying that because the enemy is the wrong word, right? Because we're talking about oftentimes very good discussions where intentions are positive on both sides, but it is still a discussion ultimately where there is heading towards a win/loss, and certainly enemy is the terminology used in the book. The point is, right, that it's when you understand both that quality engagement and productive conversation and true wins or losses can actually manifest. Here's the kicker, and here's what I think most people don't understand, is that in these situations, it is your point of view that you usually understand the worst. Which seems odd, right? Because you would say, well, Jeff, I have spent so much time with my point of view. No, you haven't. Not really. What you've done is you've thought a lot about building your argument. You have done a lot, maybe in the space of your point of view, but you have not really reflected on your point of view. You have not actually examined your point of view. You have just built your point of view. Okay, now think about this, right? Think about, and we'll just keep using the term the enemy as though, let's use opposition, right? You can study the opposition. You've been studying the opposition in a non-biased, comprehensive way, right? So you can watch your opposition engage. You can look at their argument for consistency, right? You can look at their argument for emotional highs and lows. You can study the opposition and have been doing so in a non-biased way. Right? When is the last time you have studied your own argument that way? Right? I mean, really think about that. When have you stepped back and examined your own argument in that kind of detail, in that non-biased format, over that period of time? The reality is the answer is often, well, I haven't. Right? I have built my argument, but I got to admit, I have not studied it that way. I have not critiqued it that way. I have not observed it that way. If you have ever watched a video of yourself evaluating a patient, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because for years you've been seeing patients, you think you're presenting one product, right? You've been building your skill set and then you present your product. But then one day, maybe for me, you're in fellowship training, right? And you're forced to videotape your eval and then watch it from a third-party perspective. And oh my gosh, is what you thought you were presenting not what actually got presented. Folks, I am here to say that it is the same in discourse as it is in that evaluation. What you think you are presenting is nowhere near what you're actually presenting if you were to step back and be able to look at it from a third-party, non-biased point of view. It is your own argument, not the opposition's, that you generally understand the least, simply because you have not non-biased examined it. You haven't studied it. All right, so if you're buying that, it kind of leads into, well, then how do you do this? Like, how do you get this non-biased evaluation of your own argument when you're so tied up in it? And that's where this discipline comes in. So I used to sit on airplanes that had terrible Wi-Fi, like I was saying earlier, and I would sit there with my computer, a Word document or a piece of paper, and I began to examine my own arguments. So what I would do, right, is I would pull up past conversations, or I would look at different emails and look at how I was presenting things and try to do my best to look at it as though I was my own opposition, right, and study it in that same non-biased way. Specifically, I would ask 3 questions. Right now, and remind you, I'm looking at my own argument, but from a third-person point of view. Question number 1, which of this person's points, mine in that case, what's up, Jamie? Good to see you, man. Which of this person's points are most driven by emotion in the absence of data? Right? So where is that asymmetry the most egregious, right? Where has this person clearly gotten caught up in the emotional aspect of what they're saying for whatever their relevant history might be? Where are they speaking way out in front of the data because they are excited about it? In other words, where is the ice the thinnest, right? Where is that person stepping out of bounds? Now, it does not mean that you can't be on thin ice. It does mean that, though, if the ice is thicker somewhere else, you should probably poke the ice fishing hole there, not here. So can you identify that space? Number 2, what preparation gaps does this person, and again, I'm studying myself. What preparation gaps does this person have? Right? Or what experiences have they not had that are creating blind spots considering the content area of this argument? Okay, so a great one if you were evaluating me, right, especially in years past, trying to buff up on it now. But when I speak about, strengthening and the importance of that, there is a reasonable, really, man? Like, really? Do you know that well? Like, what is your strength and conditioning background? How many folks have you really trained, right? How much time in the trenches have you seen that? Right? How many different strength and conditioning principles have you absorbed and found discrepancies between? That you would immediately begin poking holes in my game because my relevant experience really isn't very strong in those areas. Now, in the past year, I've done the CSCS. I've got CrossFit Level 1 next month. I'm in the CrossFit gym often now. It's building, but there's no denying there's still a lot of gaps there. So again, sitting back and looking at your own arguments relative to yourself and saying, where are the actual experience gaps that exist underpinning some of this emotional discourse? Okay, question number 3, the final one is, if this individual wins, again, studying yourself, if this individual wins this argument, this movement, this shift, this vote, whatever, if this individual wins, what are the unforeseen negative sequelae? Because I promise you they exist. Because when someone's building an argument, they get so caught up on the benefits of winning, why the profession would be better, right? Why the victory matters. But what they're very rarely doing is saying, if this does go my way, what are the negative consequences? That is almost always a blind spot. So when you're evaluating your own argument from this third person, it's fun to look at saying, if that does go forward, let's say it was a unanimous victory, right? What are the negative sequelae of that, right? What people would be not better off because of that philosophy, mind shift, right? Political movement, vote being won, whatever it is. What are the negative sequelae? Because I can promise you the opposition always looks at that, but the self never looks at that because you're so caught up in the win. So those 3 different things, right? What is the point most driven by emotion, asymmetrical to the quantity of data? Where is this individual's experience, right, not really hardy enough to be supporting the vigor of the argument? And if that argument goes forward and quote unquote wins, what are the negative sequelae? If you can have the discipline to pull up your own dialogue, whether that's in a Twitter feed or in an email thread, turn it, take a second and a breath, write down those 3 questions and study your own discourse in the same way that you would study your opposition. In light of those queries, you will be shocked in what you find. You will be shocked in the amount of bias you bring towards. You'll be shocked in how many gaps exist in your argument. You will be appalled in the same way that you're appalled when you videotape yourself evaluating a patient and say to yourself, there's no way it looks like that. I know I was better than that. I know that I was more true to the process. No, you weren't. You were caught up in emotion. You wanted to help the patient. Everything about your intention was good. But it doesn't mean the quality of what you did paralleled that. So can you step back and do that? Now, the last thing I want to say before I jump off is that this is not about winning, right? Now, sometimes it's about winning. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, nothing makes the gaps in your own argument jump out at you like a minimally biased exploration for merit. Like nothing. I mean, nothing makes the gaps in your argument jump out better than getting a third person's point of view. It's why you ask a trusted advisor. Right? It's why you ask someone, hey, am I really going down the right path? This is the same idea. You're removing yourself from the scenario and objectively analyzing the point of view. Nothing's going to make gaps jump out better than that. And once you see your own gaps, you become a weapon because now you know where the opposition's probably going to go. You can either buttress those up or you can prepare for it. But either way, your position becomes significantly strengthened by understanding where those gaps exist. So there's no question that this exercise can lead towards a higher percentage of winning. But I would argue that it also leads, more importantly, to better discourse in general. The reason being, it softens your edges, right? When you see some of your own gaps, you become less of a zealot, right? And zealots don't listen. Zealots don't compromise. Zealots don't learn. All zealots care about is what they believe being advanced regardless. They haven't looked at the negative sequelae. They haven't explored the gaps. They don't really want to hear what you say. They just want to win. They want their mission, their point, their bias to conquer. Right? Those people, generally when engaged, don't lead to awesome discourse and mutually beneficial advancement. right? Zealots don't listen, zealots don't compromise. People who know there are gaps in their arguments tend to be less zealot-like. It's just natural, because once you know, hey, what I'm saying is not perfect either. Like, if you really examine this, there's plenty of things. Even if my point does go through, there are some negative consequences of that. Once you have a rounder understanding of what you're presenting, your zealot nature decreases, your learning increases, right? And that is gigantic. The other thing is, guys, this is okay. It's okay to sometimes realize that you're wrong. It is okay to sometimes realize, after you examine from a third-party, minimally biased point of view, you know what? It doesn't hold up. It just doesn't hold up. When I get away from all the reasons I wanted it to be true, and I actually look at the argument for the merit of what is, it really isn't all that good. And that's awesome. Talk about growth. I mean, you just took somewhere that not only were you fired up about, you were actually engaging in maybe a somewhat negative fashion, but when you actually looked at it and ran all that data, your argument really does not hold up. And now you can turn, you can email that person and say, hey, I've really done some thinking, and I think we've got to kind of ditch what I was saying and kind of look at where you're at, and can you bring that in? Can you teach me? Now we're growing. Right? Now we're growing because you put yourself in that space where the examined point of view was put forth, was explored, was maybe proved wrong in this case, and now we're learning together. Those are the kind of things you never see on social media. You never see an argument come to that point. Right? And the reason being that points of view that are being presented are oftentimes poorly examined. Why? Because nobody realizes they don't know thyself. Right? It is your point of view that you know the least because you never examine it from a third-party perspective. When you have the discipline to do so, not only are you more likely to be productive, right, in discussions and discourse, right, possibly win more than you lose, right, but you're also more likely to bring the entire group forward, to round your edges, to be less zealot-like, right, to be willing to admit that your point of view was not favorable. This type of discourse, I think, if you can engage in it, will dramatically change your personal and professional life. It takes some discipline, but if you can pause and use this exercise on some of the things that you are most emotional about, you are going to be shocked in how it often shakes out. And when you are shocked and willing to accept it, I think you're going to grow as a person, as a professional, not only you, your entire sphere of engagement. And that's what this is all about. Finding people whose sphere of engagement it is productive to be within. You want to be one of those people. I want to be one of those people. I want to hang with those people, right? Think about it, right? Examining your own point of view, proving yourself wrong and the possible merits of that. All right, team, we're heading down to the airport. I'm heading to Charlotte and over to Asheville. So looking forward to the course this weekend. For those of you who are there, Kelsey, I'll see you there. The rest of you folks who will be there this weekend, can't wait to see you. And then we'll be back there very soon in Blacksburg. Take care, everybody. Have an awesome Thursday.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.